Welcome to Talk Recovery Radio. Almost had this one start off perfect. Forgot the monitors were on the other computer. So there we go, ladies and gentlemen. Talk Recovery Radio coming to you live. We're not in the downtown east side, Darren.
No, I'm in my house.
You're in your house, yeah.
In my house.
Yeah. We usually air every Thursday in the downtown east side at Vancouver Co-op radio station, CFRO 100.5 FM. Shout out to Kimmett, who's going to be repodcasting our show for us. So if you're on the radio right now, you're listening to last week's show. And we're here with technology, Facebook, Zoom Live, couple of kinks, but we're moving forward. We like to start off the show with some hot topics and so forth. And, just recently, unfortunately, in the province of British Columbia, the overdose crisis is continuing. There's actually, it's rising and it's going up. And so if you're using out there, please be safe and really consider your options. I wanted to talk about this poster, though. There's some conversations amongst the recovery community and what's taking place across the country. And we sent an email to the people that created this post to add a new point, point number 5, that a conversation just about recovery.
No doubt.
Pick up a naloxone kit. Yeah, go to an overdose prevention site. Yeah, talk to your doctor. But hey, man, recovery is possible, and there's just no message at all.
It's sad. I don't know. I mean, is it just so that we bring the hype around the clean heroin conversation?
Well, here's the thing, Darren. I got an email yesterday by Eric Costin. He's the Assistant Deputy Minister for Controlled Substances for Health Canada. Sent a really lengthy email. The email went to every single physician in the country. Not just, a little newsletter, every physician in the country got this email. And I actually got this email forwarded to me by a couple of different physicians because you need to take a look at this. So in the email, there's an attachment with a bunch of regulations and policies that Health Canada is talking about. And there's about 15 to 20 pages in this document. The word recovery is in it once. And it's not even a headline. It's not even structured as it's just somewhere in there as a hyperlink for some other website. It's all about safe supply. We're calling it pandemic supply right now. There's a big mess going on right now between physicians and the pandemic supply of prescription drugs. There's a lot of infighting going on. A lot of physicians are like, where's the ethical clinical trials for all of this? And I don't know. There's a storm brewing, and So I emailed Eric as well, and I know Eric. I met him, and I'm like, Eric, why is recovery only in this document once? Your Health Canada, an email to every physician in the country, and recovery is not even it's not even an idea, or in this entire crisis
during an overdose crisis.
Yeah. No prevention, nothing in the email that was sent out by Health Canada.
It's as if
treatment.
It's as if they're considering overdose and the issue of addiction completely two separate things. The overdose crisis, it just needs naloxone education and safe injection sites. If you're at risk for an overdose, let's not talk about your option of getting clean or getting out or detoxing or seeking treatment. Here's just all the things that you should do to avoid dying from an overdose.
Which is super important.
Totally, but where's the option? The overdose crisis is a result of an addiction issue, and an addiction issue requires an option of treatment or the opportunity for some sort of more harm reduction or abstinence provided for someone. It's sickening.
Yeah. Well, hopefully more will be revealed. Hopefully the assistant deputy minister emails me back. We'll see. I mean, it was a nice email. It really was. So hopefully he comes back. Hopefully you like what you're listening to. Hopefully you like what we stand for. We don't stand for one pathway to recovery. We stand for all of them, as long as they all include recovery. and recovery includes everything as well. So hope you like us. Send us some comments, send us some emails if you're interested in being a guest. You can replay our show on SoundCloud, YouTube, iTunes, our Facebook videos. Darren, pretty good. We're getting like 10, 15,000 views by the end of it. So that's pretty excited. And we've been on for 6 years. Talk Recovery Radio is powered by New West Recovery, which is Canada's recovery community, and made up of Last Door Recovery Society and Westminster House. Every show, we interview 2 guests. We've been doing personal stories when we were on the radio. During COVID, that all kind of got mixed up, but we'll be bringing personal stories back to the show. And I think Evan, who books our guests, has got some personal stories coming up, so stay tuned to our Facebook page. Darren, who are we talking to recovery with first?
Yeah, today we get to talk recovery with author of Daring to Share Trauma to Recovery, Diana Reyers. There's Diana. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Good. Thanks for coming on the show today.
Thanks for inviting me.
Good. So you've got a few books out actually around this idea of individuals and their stories.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about, all of those books and what they are exactly.
Thank you. Well, they're all titled Daring to Share, and then they have the tagline of the first one is There to Hear. So that's how we started, with community members, offering them the opportunity to share their story of From There to Hear. So because I'm an authenticity coach, my sort of goal or focus is to support people to show up in life as their authentic self rather than their inauthentic self. And whether they're doing that consciously or not, usually they're not doing it consciously. But they feel like it's not, there's something not right. So then they are inspired to find what their authentic self is and to move towards that. So the first book is There to Hear. The second volume is Deception to Truth, which is the same sort of idea, just a different focus. And then the Trauma to Recovery is, of course, that was very specialized. That's a special edition with recovery. Okay.
So you're an authenticity coach, amongst other things, a storyteller, author, are you like a publisher, I guess, as well?
I am a publisher, yeah. So they all sort of go together.
Yeah.
I was an authenticity coach for 13 years, and that's what I did.
And how is that different than any form of therapy or psychiatry or like what?
Life coaching. Yeah, it's life coaching with the focus on authenticity in particular, which is about living in line with values. So understanding and being able to articulate, being really clear about what your values are, but more specifically for me, as a coach, I really wanted to inspire people to understand what it felt like to live and lead in line with each of their top 5 core values. Okay. Because then they could, if they didn't feel it, they could shift.
So I'm sure one of the things about living an unauthentic life is some denial and lack of awareness around that. I'm not being authentic to myself.
Totally.
What is it like? How do you get out of that? Is there deep therapy that's involved? Is there just like, getting a little bit of a slap in the face? Like,
it can be
a therapy slap in the face.
Yeah, it's a cathartic process for sure. So it doesn't
require like for one to tell their story start to finish as honest as they can, and then in front of somebody.
Yeah, so it's so we take each of our storytellers through a process, and storytelling being either at an event or in the written word in a book or a chapter or in their journal. So it is a process, and it does begin with, when people are living inauthentically, they're living in fear. So fear of being authentic, fear of being who they really are. So what are the trade-offs if I am authentic? And authenticity is not about, going up to somebody and telling them they're an asshole. That's actually quite inauthentic. So it's about going up to somebody and saying, I'm really not okay with what you're doing right now. It's triggering me, or, can we have a conversation about that?
Right.
So it's about diplomacy and integrity and showing up in an ethical and moral way, for other people, but also ourselves. So that requires emotional and social intelligence. So, and that's a process that we need to work through, right? To understand, it's about clarity, Giuseppe. It's about understanding how I want to show up in the world in line with my values, and to have the confidence to do so.
So I've noticed myself lately, like you say, how to show up as yourself in the world, being bombarded by, you know, whether it's the COVID topic or whether it's the harm reduction and how the government is sort of pursuing the overdose crisis and our people in the downtown east side. And I'm, you know, back and forth from, you know, Bill Gates is, you know, creating this thing and yet I, you know, the other side is like, hurry up, let's find a vaccine, you know, protect my children, you know, protect myself. And I honestly find myself like I find myself fairly biased when it comes to this. I'm not on either side. Like I want to be educated, but I know I'm not being told the truth. You know, one side claims the truth, the other side claims the truth, and it's hard to find where I should believe in. And is that have something to do with the outside influence, or is that like an internal thing?
Sure. So it's kind of
who I am.
Yeah, it's kind of both. I mean, so obviously you have a value of integrity, but integrity is not just always about doing the right thing. Integrity is about understanding what the right thing is for you.
Right.
So that's where you're probably having, so again, it goes back to clarity. It's always about clarity. When we have a clarity, we have a plan. So, you know, you're not clear
no.
about what is right for you. And, you know, the thing about authenticity, it's a really great quote, is that authenticity is not about the need to be right or the fear of being wrong. So it's about that it can be right or wrong, and that maybe there is no right or wrong, generally speaking, for society and a whole, and that we are experiencing that with COVID. We're experiencing it with the whole recovery scene. I mean, and you know, the opioid crisis, for sure. You mentioned that. It's like, how do we make this right? Sometimes we just can't. Like it's a really difficult thing. I know I'm struggling with that with COVID, because for me, I know what the right thing is, or I thought I did 2 months ago.
Right.
And now they're going to be lifting restrictions. So it's like, I did not think that was the right thing to do. But I also understand for people in, you know, low income situations, or, you know, they need to feed their families. So we need to, you know, how many people on that side are we going to lose from financial stress and strain and suicide and, you know, people walking around with guns and shooting others and getting angry? How many people are we going to lose on that emotional level, as opposed to how many people are we going to lose if we lift restrictions and we lose them to the COVID virus and they die? It's really, we're stuck right in between a rock and a hard place. So what is right and wrong?
Well, what I want.
Sorry, Darren. So much of it is fear. What is, you know, the what ifs and so forth. And I wanted to just talk about storytelling and the power of storytelling, because I remember when I was new in recovery, there was fear. Like I didn't know how to live life without the use of substances.
Of course.
I didn't know, like I didn't say I was afraid, but now, you know, in hindsight, looking back, I mean, most of it was fear. I didn't know about all these what ifs. And then people started sharing their stories.
Yes.
And you have, I mean, from the reviews I've done of the book and people's experiences, that's the power, the changing, where there's this shift where when you hear the story, something happens. Can you talk about what is it that happens when we hear stories, and why is that so powerful?
Yeah, for sure. And sorry, I called the other gentleman Giuseppe. Sorry about that.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, I'm the Italian.
I don't have my glasses on. Yeah, so the power of storytelling, very good. So the power of storytelling is all about creating or holding space for people to discover the feeling of connection. So connection, not just with other people, but with ourselves. So that is the process of daring to share, is to first and initially to discover how to connect to oneself. So that is about speaking truth. And And they need to feel like they're in a trusted environment to be able to do that. So whether it's recovery, any kind of process like this, whether it's recovery or just, moving through any kind of adversity, it is about recovering from trauma. So trauma, of course, as you know, carries for many a lot of shame. And whether, again, it's recovery or not, it's about moving through that shame in a trusted environment and being able to share our truth with the confidence that we need to get to the other side. So that is the power of storytelling, because when we, and that's what Daring to Share is all about. And I'm so proud of that, because I have held that space for so many people. And it's really, truly empowering for me, because I see the empowerment in them when they get through, 10 or 15 minutes of sharing their story. And they're shaking. I mean, it's a very difficult thing to do.
Now, you were in Kelowna to do some work on your recent book, and you were, sorry, the name of the treatment center slipped my mind.
Yeah, Caris.
Caris, that's it. And
Yeah.
What happened there? And what helped you with this book? Like, you followed these women around, you heard their stories. What did you learn about addiction and trauma?
Well, so I had never been in that world, or, I've certainly gone from trauma to recovery in my own journey. So I met these people at my first book launch here in Kelowna, and they have something called the Dream Project, where they provide the opportunity for everyone in recovery there to fulfill a dream that they've always had. And they had a few people who love to write. And so I said, let's make a book, let's hold space for them to do that. And it was a very humbling experience for me, because I actually experienced shame that they were sharing their trauma. We met once a week, sorry, to answer your question, for 8 months to do this. It took a little bit longer than normal with my other groups, but that was fine. Because they had experienced great trauma, like deep trauma. And so one day they were sharing their trauma with me, and one of them asked me what my trauma was. And I was like, I don't want to share my trauma because I'm embarrassed. Mm. And they were like, what are you talking about? Why would you be embarrassed about your trauma? And I said, well, because it's not as significant as yours. I didn't experience what you did. We're talking about, living on the street, rape, so many horrific things. And I'll never forget that day, because they all leaned in. We were in a round table, and they said, Diana, your trauma is yours to share. And it's not insignificant to ours. You shouldn't even be comparing it. So, here I had, the client coaching me. Yeah. So it was beautiful.
It's the feelings are the same, right? It's the same. Doesn't matter how much you used. It does, you used heroin, you shot needles, you smoked weed, you're 16 years old, you're 50. It's the feelings, that
it is. And, I drink a glass of wine every night. And why do I do that? I do that to block my stress and my emotions. 100%. Yeah. So that, but for me, I didn't want to share that, because it just felt minimalistic, I guess, or I don't know. I didn't want to invalidate theirs by.
Well, it's the whole.
So it's an interesting thing, right?
It prohibits a lot of people from asking for help, because they're feeling what you felt. It's like, oh, it's not that bad. It's not okay. A little bit of denial. It's not even real.
Totally.
Not as bad as the person's, standing at Columbia and Hastings. So I'm good.
But I haven't drank since December.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
On that topic, I just realized it's Darren's 9 years of recovery. Nice. Congratulations, Darren. We'll talk a bit more about that.
Congrats.
Break. You're listening to Talk Recovery Radio on Zoom Live right now. Darren?
It's 14 years.
Oh, 14 years.
14 years.
Nice. Beautiful.
He knew that. He just
12, 14. Yeah.
Sorry about that, Darren.
Yeah, I remember feeling the same way about seeking help, and that was one of the hardest things within a group therapeutic environment was this comparison. That, we can say you shouldn't do that. That's you shouldn't do that.
Right.
It's natural though, isn't it? Isn't there a
Well, yes. And I think I'm in a position, I was the coach, so I was in a leadership role, and I didn't want to invalidate them. I didn't want to, I was supporting them. So I didn't want to take away from their sort of feelings of suffering. But I got over that because we shared a lot after that. I mean,
and how they gave you permission.
They
and were
did.
ones to say,
yeah,
like,
so
it's all-
gracious. Yeah, so gracious and lovely.
And I think we need to hear that, like, you know, from someone else that we're comparing ourselves to, I think, in order to actually believe that we are the same.
Yes.
And my shame is as important. And
Absolutely. What they taught me too was that like everything is shareable. I mean, and that is really part of daring to share, is that we don't just share the you know, the victories or which are totally celebratory, but we need to share everything we feel, because just because you're recovered doesn't mean you're not still suffering, or that you're not triggered, or, you know, that things don't come up. So every, you know, conversation that we had together was really impactful. I mean, very powerful. And I was drained when I left, because, you know, you absorb all of these emotions, and they absorbed everyone else's as well. There was a lot of really deep conversation.
I think it's easy to stick with judgment, you know, around people like that, and in order to not like get that emotional. Once we connect on a human level with someone, it's deepening, it's affecting. I was wondering, like, did these women, as they're telling their story, as they're willing to write it down, as they become willing to share those parts of their lives, do they know already that it's gonna be in a book? It's gonna be out there for other people?
Yeah, they sign a contract.
And I'm just like, how do we get past that thing that is, should I leave this part out? Like this.
Oh, that's the biggest conversation. Yeah.
Because I mean, I know in a lot of talk therapy groups, it is sort of suggested or important to, like, hey, careful, you know, you don't want to reveal too much. You don't want to completely open yourself, you know, because there are people who judge, and there are people who, you know, you're gonna feel that response with.
Yeah.
And how important is it to, you know, separate safety to the whole truth?
Right. So right off the bat, I mean, they need to be comfortable with what they share. So I would never, ever encourage someone to share something that they're not completely comfortable.
Yeah.
However, there's always still discomfort within the completely comfortable, if that makes any sense. I mean, it goes back to the values. So, you know, we went over that several times. It's like, just because that's uncomfortable for you doesn't necessarily mean that you don't want to share it. So let's just be clear about that. So what is your clarity around that? So that takes, of course, conversation. This is why it took us so long. And then there's also the pieces of, well, there are other players in my story. So there's my family. There's, you know, the guy who did what he did to me, or there's this person who didn't support me. And how, so again, the Daring to Share way is about how can we actually share our story with the people who are part of it, while still honoring them and their place in their personal evolution. Because we believe that just because someone shows up inauthentically or uncomfortable or in a compromised way, it doesn't make them bad people. It just means that they are where they are. And it's our role, you know, to model authenticity is our way of supporting them. So how can we include them in our story and include all the uncomfortable bits in a diplomatic way that honors everybody involved, including ourselves?
Yeah. And was that the first book, or was that the most recent?
That's all of them.
With the women specifically.
Oh, the women, that's the second book.
Okay.
Yeah, that's our special edition, because I had the first one done and I was working on the second one, volume 2. Yeah. And then I met Philippa Douglas at Caris Society. And that's when that all happened. So I plopped it in the middle as a special edition.
and that's cool. Do you have feedback as far as where those women have ended up? Like,
yeah.
Did it really, like, I mean, I'm sure there's probably some women that have been battling this, you know, in treatment and you know, failing and all of that. Like, did some of them now see this as the component that was perhaps missing the other times?
Maybe. So I had started out with 8. 2 dropped off.
Mhm.
One actually moved on to another writing opportunity. So that was great. I was happy for her.
Cool.
The other one was just recognized after a certain amount of time that it wasn't the right time for her because of all the things that we just talked about, that, you know,
Right.
things were too uncomfortable and she couldn't manage it.
Yeah.
So I actually, it was a mutual decision that she not continue because it was causing trauma for her. And then the other 6 have all really, you know, felt like it was very cathartic and inspirational for them and supported them, although it wasn't easy. So they will tell you that it was traumatic going through it.
No doubt.
So that was another level that we worked. That's why I was happy I was working with Karis, because they had their trauma therapists and everybody in place.
Very
And that was really important for me. It was an integral component because I'm not a trauma therapist. I'm a life coach and authenticity coach. So that was really important for me.
So now on the Daring to Share website, so daringtoshare.com, that you allow or provide, you know, the opportunity for a cost, of course, for an individual to go through, you know, how to write their story, how to, and eventually end up as sort of a published book.
Yes.
And so this is a one-on-one thing they get to do with you. Is it harder without that sort of safe environment, whether it's now or just as that option on the website, like to go through that as they sit there through a computer? Is there other methods that they can you know, sort of cope with what they're doing?
Right. So if I understand the question, it's if they feel like it's a trusting environment, doing it one-on-one on the computer. Yeah. So it's a little bit different than being in person.
Or being in treatment.
Sorry, or being in treatment. Yeah. So not everybody I work with, of course, is in treatment or recovery from, you know, alcohol or drugs, from addiction. In fact, most of the people I work with aren't. That was a very special book that I work, but I'm happy to work with anybody who's in recovery, especially with the experience I've had. But no, it is a very trusting environment. If I have somebody in Kelowna where I can do it in person, I definitely do that first choice.
Okay.
Of course, not right now in COVID, but
right.
that all changed. But you know, it's still one. I mean, I could work with you right now on Zoom, and you know, we could produce a beautiful book. So yeah, to answer your question, I think it's a very safe environment. I mean, it's all confidential, and I think I have credibility with that.
Good. Yeah, that sounds kind of, I mean, amazing. Like that you could sort of take your life. Like, I mean, unless I thought I was an author or a writer, that, you know, I'm not going to have a book published.
Well, everybody can be a writer, and everyone is a writer. I mean, it's journaling. Basically, what we do is journaling to the highest level. And, you know, if you've been in any kind of recovery, I don't know if that's part of it, but I hope it is, because journaling is very, very therapeutic.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I'm an editor. So the editing process is critical for a book if you want it to be, you know, polished. And I definitely never change the context of the story or anything like that, but I support the author to have things grammatically correct and that they're sharing what they want to share.
That's awesome.
So that's
are we in the midst of a 4th edition?
We're in the midst of special edition 2020, which happened because during the COVID crisis, I decided that I would not charge anybody to work with me, or at least market or look for people, seek people to work with me for money, because I feel like we're all in a compromised situation. So I threw out the offer to work with 10 people on Saturday mornings to write their story of COVID, which is chaos to calm. So Daring to Share, chaos to calm. And at the end of the 12 weeks, they will have the choice to be in that book if they like, if they feel comfortable with that.
That's
so
super cool. That is very
well. I'm hoping that the proceeds of that will go to therapy for people who are experiencing trauma from COVID. So I'll cover my costs, but then whatever I make will go back to that. And I feel like it will be a piece of history, you know, to share those stories of COVID, because this is huge. This is a huge thing that we're going through.
No doubt. I love, I don't know if you said it or who said it, but I saw a quote, one uncomfortable conversation creates 10 years of wisdom.
That's
And
me.
that's awesome. I mean, because that's the block, isn't it? Like there's just something about myself. If I say out loud, I'm going to be uncomfortable, and I'm going to avoid that at all cost. And
yeah, we need to say those things. We need to have those conversations.
Right. And yeah, and to know that it's up to us who we say that to. It doesn't have to be in a group. It can be one-on-one. You can put it in a book if you want. You know, like the spectrum is there, but I just like that the idea of that one conversation.
Well, it creates wisdom, right? It creates wisdom, and the conversations. I really look at the stories that every one of my authors has written as conversations with their soul. Wow. And they're sharing those conversations with other people, and they're willing to do that, which is a huge, big step. Because trust me, like we lose people when we have those uncomfortable conversations sometimes. So we gain people, and we, you know, I like to look at those conversations as it's not just one-sided. So, you know, if it's me having a conversation with you, I want to make sure that you understand my story and that you perceive it correctly. And I also want to hear your story because then I have a perception of you. So, I mean, I've never met you two, but I could have a perception of you, and I would love to get to know you better because I don't know who you are. Yeah. I know you're great people. You're doing this wonderful talk show. And so you have integrity in that way, and you're supporting people. So I know that piece. But if I really want to know who you are, I want to have those uncomfortable conversations and understand you so that we can connect, like from our soul.
Wow. I mean, and just knowing that, you know, the courage is already there. If an individual is online, is on your website, and you know they're looking for that, you know, that they're already invested in themselves in that way to, you know, to have that and to have that experience and that connection.
Yeah, we want to inspire people to connect with others.
Yeah,
and to hold space for other people to share their story. So
that, I mean, that's amazing. All I got to say is, you know, check out the website, daringtoshare.com. I mean, obviously it's still going on online, as you talked about. Diana Reyers, thank you very much for coming on the show and talk recovery with us today.
Thank you very much for inviting me. It was a great conversation.
Yeah, no doubt. Okay, well, we got some more coming up with Suraj Jaswal from the Conscious Brotherhood. So that should be interesting as well. I just want to say thanks for those that are listening on the radio right now at 100.5 FM. The Co-op Radio still playing our show and still putting everything out there that we're doing today. So thank you very much. We'll see you soon.
Thank you.
All righty, welcome back. Well, Darren, I forgot to bring it up at the beginning of the show. It's your 14 years clean. Congratulations, congratulations. You took a cake last night.
I did.
Yeah, and how was that cake?
More than anything, I just wanted to be in the room, connected with people.
Oh yeah, it was an online meeting. That's
hugs,
right.
Sharing cake, you know, eating, laughing. So it was odd. Out of the 14 years that I've been celebrating, you know, my change and you know, getting out of addiction, I've never done it online before. So it was strange. I'm just glad because I knew I had to do it, not make it about me and what I wanted and the perfect, you know, idea that was my day. That was the date. Let's celebrate it the best way we can. So.
Congratulations, Darren. I've been to many of your cakes in real person, and to be honest, I kind of missed the cake part of it because it was pretty good cake. So next year you'll need 2 cakes to make up for it.
There you go.
You're listening to Talk Recovery Radio. We come to you live every Thursday, different format right now during COVID because the radio station is closed due to COVID. I'm probably going to be reopening soon, but with all the microphones and everything, it's a bit difficult for the station. So we're doing them on Zoom and rebroadcasting on the radio a week later, thanks to Kimmett for uploading the shows. And we are powered by New West Recovery, Canada's recovery community. And we got Saruj on the line. And oh, you're muted there, Saruj, if you want to unmute yourself.
All right, guys, how you doing? It's Surge, actually, Surge.
Surge. I'm sorry about that, Surge.
I like
Thanks for the
though. That sounds like a lion's name, man. There you go.
Surge. Surge. Usually when we're on the radio, we have like the ability to talk to you before the show, and usually we get the name pronunciation correct, but we can't do that right now. So
right.
You, I had the privilege of meeting you, I think 2 weeks ago on a different platform talking about recovery services and support. And I was really inspired in what you do. And, you know, the entire idea of conscious brotherhood is about men supporting men. And there's one part of there that I wanted to focus on right now. And it's just and it couples with the conversation we just had earlier about trauma to recovery. It's not just accepting the light part of us, but the dark part of us as well.
Yes.
You know, and just the honesty of who we are and what we do. Can you touch on that a bit?
Yeah, I'd love to. Well, at the Conscious Brotherhood, we talk a lot about shadow work, right? Is what we're talking about when you're saying the dark part of us. And those are the things that we tend to want to push down. So like, I would say things like guilt, shame, sadness, fear, just different aspects of ourselves that we tend to not want to take a look at. And what we do at the Conscious Brotherhood is that we mine these things, right? And I've heard it in another group that I'm part of, we mine it for gold. So when we really take a look at these things and we love these things about ourselves, what we do is that we'll do certain processes to help us accept those things. And from there, usually what happens is that you find the light within, right? Because there's always the light within. There's the yin and the yang to it. So when I talk about,
it's the hope part. It's the hope part. Yeah.
It's the hope part. It really is the hope part, you know, and like, I'm all about doing like, I mean, I start my day with gratitude. I do meditation, right? I connect with spirit, with God, universe, whatever words you want to use. And I did recognize that a lot of me was always trying to just be in that mode all the time. And that was a lot of myself, even in, you know, recovery and getting healthy and everything like that. It's just like, okay, I'm just going to focus on this. And that's a beautiful thing. And I do focus on that stuff. But what I started to recognize is that I was pushing these other things down. And what happens is that you can really only push them down for so long before they blow up, right? And they just take over. Mm-hmm. So what we do at the Conscious Brotherhood is a lot of that, accepting the shadow work and really, really loving it, right? Like, okay, I'm feeling sad today. It's like, I honor that, brother. To have another man look at you in your eyes and go, I honor how you're feeling. It really takes the weight off of you, because a lot of times we're just fighting that feeling, right? We don't accept that we feel it. So to have someone else say, hey, I honor you, brother, I'm here with you, is a really powerful thing.
And did you start this? Is this something that's out there that you're part of?
Do you mean the group or the?
Yeah, the group, the actual Conscious Brotherhood.
Yes, no, that's something that I started. So I've been doing men's circles, I guess, for about a year now. Like, I've always been interested in it, right? Like personal development, healing, coaching. And the Conscious Brotherhood really came to life about 4 months ago. But I've been doing men's circles, and we've been doing healing work, and we've been doing all this work for about a year.
And if you go if you're on this Facebook video feed right now, there's a link where you can go and you have these Facebook events that are, I think it's the fourth Monday of every month. What is it again, the events?
Well, we do a weekly event. So we have right now, I mean, normally we do it at White Lotus Divine Healing, which is a beautiful space to come to. And it's a $10 drop-in donation. But obviously with the COVID going on right now, we're doing it on Zoom. So if you are interested, just message us on Facebook or Instagram, and we'll send you the Zoom ID. And that's free of charge right now, obviously, due to the whole situation.
Due to what's happening, yes. So someone, you know, we've had awesome conversations about meditation and so forth on this show. And there's this thing that happens, even for me, this happened too. Like when I was in active using, like I couldn't sit still. You know, I
Right.
remember the very first time, I'll never forget this because I never went to counselors or anything. I
Right.
got caught at work using, I got in big trouble, and I was like, okay, I'll do this rehab stuff, still using. And I remember this counselor told me to like breathe. I was just like,
That's simple, huh? Yeah.
yeah, I couldn't even do it. Like I couldn't do it without like it was all ego laughter. Like I just thought this is ridiculous. Like
Right.
I could, but I couldn't do it. The reality. And then I got into recovery, and I became the step 11 and the mutual support groups. And I thought I was going to be this meditation guy. And to be honest, now like I'm so busy, and it gets really hard. I'm pretty sure I'm not the only one that has that story, because I know a lot of my friends, I remember their meditation phase, and I remember their, busy phase and all that kind of stuff. So
Right.
how do we not become complacent? How do we not judge ourselves for not being spiritual enough and meditating every day? Like I don't meditate every day. I judge myself for it.
Right. Yeah, no, it's a big factor. I'm experiencing that for myself right now too, right? Is one, there's no wrong, no right. That's a big thing with meditation. People try to go into it and try to do it perfectly, and that can be discouraging because there is no perfectly. And so some days you'll feel amazing, right? You'll come out of it, you're like, man, I'm feeling great. And then other days you're like, oh, I couldn't connect, I couldn't do this. And all of a sudden that can discourage you because you're not feeling the same feeling you were feeling when you were in the mode. But that's really not the point of meditation, right? The point of meditation is just to really center, connect with God, connect with spirit, and feel what you're feeling in the moment. And what I've noticed with me, especially during this COVID time, I've really enjoyed it because now we have the time to really set up a morning routine, right? And I've taken the time to do that. But I did even notice the last couple of days, I'll say, yeah, it's been about 2 days. This morning I meditated, but I didn't meditate for 2 days, and I noticed the effect, right? I noticed the effect during my day because I've been doing it for so long now. So what I would say is the important thing is just to make sure you set aside a little bit of time, as much time as you can, really. And like I said, there's no wrong, no right. But what you really are doing is you're opening yourself up for messages to come through during the day. So another thing I'll tell people is that you're not going to, it's not about just getting into meditation, having this like crazy experience, and now like you're done and your day goes. The point is to take your meditation into the day, right? And that's not something you even really need to struggle to do. The big thing is just to do it and then go about your day, and do it and go about your day. And what I've started to notice that the more that I've done those things, the more I realize, oh, messages come through clearer, right? Like my intuition speaks more during the day. And this is just an experience I had from doing the practice. So I would say that would be the biggest thing to not get discouraged, right? Just to trust that, oh, it's not about having this huge experience when you're doing it, but more just to do it. Just keep doing it, practicing, whatever comes up. And then, yeah.
So what, like, tell us a little bit about that. That's really interesting because, I often think of meditation as this sort of end of the day thing of reflection,
Right.
But that's really cool. I believe that if I was to sort of, meditate with the intention of preparing myself more openly, as I go out throughout the day, and I'm more conscious of my reactions and my feelings.
Right.
That makes more sense now that I think about it. Like, so what are you listening to something? Are you reminding yourself? Are there mantras that you're telling yourself in order of that preparation? What is it like for you? Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I've got a few that I personally like to do. Like we do one at the Conscious Brotherhood, which is a lot about grounding, centering our energy. So we'll do things like grounding exercises, right? Where like I'll imagine my spinal cord growing into the ground, connecting with Mother Earth. And I'll imagine it growing out of the top of my head, connecting to the sun, right? Connecting to God, to spirit, whatever you want to say. And that will be one thing that I'll do depending on how I'm feeling in the morning. Right now, I'm doing this beautiful Joe Dispenza guided meditation. And I've been practicing those on a daily basis. So I have a few different ones I do, but the biggest thing for me is just kind of, checking where you're at during the day and seeing which one works for you. And like I said, again, right, there's no wrong, no right. So just kind of going with your intuition and going, okay, but if you want to start simply, very simply, just start to sit and just like Giuseppe said, breathe. So
Yeah.
you close your eyes, just focusing on your breath, Your mind's going to go batshit, and that's okay. Just focus on your breath. That's a good thing. That means you're going in the right direction, right? Because it's doing that batshitness anyways, besides, whether you're noticing it or not, but now you're starting to notice it, which is good. And you just do little things like that. And I would really recommend a grounding meditation to start off with. Like I said, right? Imagining that spinal cord growing into the ground, connecting with Mother Earth, and growing up to the sun, connecting with God, Spirit, whatever you want to say.
Yeah, that's like, to have that sort of outside influence guidance of what to think about. I don't know, for me, and I think for most people, it's easier to allow myself to sit, or else I'm just sitting still. I'm just like forcing myself to sit still.
Yeah, that's a huge factor. Yeah.
Yeah.
We have that happen in the group quite a bit too, right? People come in and they're like, "Oh man, it's so good when you do it, when you guide us." I'm like, my hand goes up, right? We do this thing where we put our hands up when we agree with each other, because I'm like, yeah, me too. Don't worry, because it gives you permission, right? When someone else is guiding you, or you're listening to something on audio, and it gives you permission to surrender. It just gives you permission to do so.
Are these Zoom meetings that you're doing, is it like just a guided meditation, or are guys sharing some stories? Are they talking? Are they?
Yeah, no, the meditation is just a sector of it. So we start with a meditation. We'll come into the group, we'll do a meditation, and then we'll do a check-in. So everyone can kind of talk about what they're going through. And I always challenge people, if you're going through something, bring it to the group. It's a safe place to talk about it. And then we spend the next hour doing processes and activities to help fill our lives with joy, to deal with healing some of these traumas. Depending on what comes up from the shares, we'll go with the intuition in the moment, right? And it really is about connecting with other men and healing together and growing.
Are you getting more of a response during this whole like isolation period, or is it going the opposite direction?
No. I mean, it's been ebb and flow, right? So some weeks that we have like a really great group of people, and like what I've noticed is people are more willing to try things. So I'm
hoping that's what people are going through, rather than, I mean, we know like relapse has gone up. There's suicide and the people that are like in it, struggling, and then all of a sudden, forced to just sit by themselves. It must be grueling. So I'm hoping that people are sort of coming out and reaching out and looking for any, new resource or any new idea that somebody's providing. And it was the same with the women previous, like that you guys are sort of providing this, as a free thing right now is fantastic.
Yeah, man, even hearing you say that just like really hit me, right? Like, it's like I forget these things, that people are going through that right now in the world. Because every time I do the group, I'm so grateful I'm doing it.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because it hits me every time, and it hasn't stopped hitting me. Like, I don't know if I forget or it gets stronger. It's like, man, people really need this.
Yeah.
Like every time I'm there, I'm like, oh my God, people really need this, right? And that gratitude just fills me. Like, there's a lot of people going through a lot right now. So it's a good way to stay connected.
Yeah.
The groups are for men, and what's the reasoning that it's a men's circle and for men and so forth? And is there anything like this for women?
There are many things like this for women. I don't know any off the top of my head. Like I said, when we're open and we're going out at White Lotus, they have amazing programs there for men and women. I had a calling to start this men's group. I didn't know this at the time, but I know this 2020 hindsight. I want to be a stronger, more loving man, right? I want to be a stronger, more loving man. It was a lot of healing my masculine essence. And there's been some beautiful things that have come from it. But like I said, at the time, it was just intuition. I just had a calling. And I also noticed that when I went to spiritual events, I was the one guy with like 17 women, which isn't a bad thing. It ain't a bad thing at all, you know what I mean? But I remember going to those things and we talk about it, and I'd be like, wow, but there's a real awakening happening, right? And I know more men are interested in this sort of thing because of the world, and there's confusion and not knowing how to really be strong and be, right? Yeah. And because we've been taught not to do these things, like talk about our feelings, and we've been taught not to sit and meditate, right? We've really been taught not to take ourselves into account and to love ourselves. I mean, at least for me, right? Like, I know I just wasn't taught those things. So it's beautiful.
And these services, these groups, they're for people with addiction issues in recovery, but also open to anyone that needs support.
Yeah, it's an open group, so it's not just particularly just to people in recovery, but many people in recovery, right, will come, and yeah, it's open to everybody. Everybody's
And
going through something.
what would be a good tip for somebody that may have a loved one that is out there and not being super spiritual? How do you bring this information to help someone make a decision that maybe this would be a good idea to do, and maybe this is something that what's a good, like if you have a friend that you see that's struggling, how would you coach them into maybe wanting to participate in this?
Oh, that's a good question, man. Because you can't force anybody. We know that, right? You're never going to force anybody. I always like the idea of planting seeds. And I would also recommend, if you are going to be someone who tries to give this to somebody else, maybe try it for yourself as well. Because like we said, attraction rather than promotion, right? Mm-hmm. People don't always hear what you say. They hear what you mean, right? Yeah. So I would recommend, I mean, if you're asking me personally, I've had situations like this, right? So I'll really recommend, and I will just plant the seed. I'll be like, hey, listen, I do this group. This is what we do. Would you like to come and try it, right? And if someone's at a place like you're talking about, I'm assuming that they're willing to try anything. So the best thing you can do is just make the offer.
Yeah, sharing your story, just like we talked at the beginning. It's this is my story. This is where I was, and this is where I'm at today with the help of this. And you can choose what it is that you want to do and so forth. So the events are posted on our Facebook page and on our website. So if you wanted to, and people have to register for them.
Yeah, so I would say that you have to message us. I mean, I try to cap it at about 10 to 12 people just so everybody has a chance to share. But right now it's open, right? So as many people that can make it. And all you have to do is message us and we'll send you the Zoom ID.
So right now we're just in this big dilemma. There's COVID going on. People are fearful, and what's going to happen next. Everyone thinks there's going to be, or there probably will be, more deaths and whether or not the vaccines, like there's all this fear going on.
Right.
Do you meditate on that? And like, how do you not go crazy thinking about it? Or are you going crazy thinking about it?
Well, yeah, the problem is when I start thinking about it is when the crazy starts, right? So the best thing I can do, right? I mean, at least for me, I've mentioned it several times, is self-love. Self-love. Take this time to really focus on, I mean, for me, setting up a morning routine. It's about 2 hours right now, which is awesome because I got the time. Meditation, walk in nature, prayer, and just doing loving things. Because, all this fear is there, guys, but also all this love is built up. Mother Earth is like looking beautiful right now, even with all this stuff happening, man. When you go out into nature, you can feel the energy, right? Like there is just some beautiful stuff happening too. So really allowing yourself to experience that, I think, is important.
Yeah. So I saw the moon last night. I don't know if anyone else saw.
Oh yeah, dude. Amazing.
And I just had this moment where, there's pain, but we're okay. Like we're okay. Like I can't be that self-centered that the little glimpse of time that I'm here is, world changing. It's like, I'm not that important. I'm here for maybe 60, 80, 100 years, hopefully.
Right.
And just looking at that moon, there was just this moment of like, it's okay. Like we're going to be okay. So.
Yeah. And you're always going to remember that, right? Like I had the same experience yesterday. I went for a walk at like Spanish Banks Wreck Beach area, and I couldn't believe this little place I came to with the water and like heaven meeting earth, right? Like it was just like, whoa, there's all this beauty happening. Yeah. Those experiences carry you, man. Those experiences carry you. They're stronger than, 50,000 fears, I say. So.
Yeah. I was on the phone last night when the moon sort of like came into the frame of my window.
Right.
I mean, it's not like it was the very first full moon that I've ever seen, but that's the one thing about that. It's like anytime I see it, like especially when it's low and it's huge in the sky, before the sun goes down, it's like there's somewhat like a notion of how connected we are, to Mother Earth, like how we are all spiritual beings. We're just trying to protect that you know, from our ego, and like Giuseppe was saying, like the breathing, like you idiot, you know, like
Right.
but if you just realize, and I think we're getting noticed. I mean, it is the world is changing, and you know, I got 2 young kids, and I can't find something brand new every day, you know,
Yeah.
to keep them distracted, which I didn't realize before, whether it was the playground, the pool, you know, the like some, you know, play place, like it was just like to keep them entertained. And we can only go out to the river, to the walk, to the park, to the big green field, and they are not sitting there going like, I don't know what to do. They, like, my son played imaginary baseball with imaginary baseball bat at the baseball field. And I realized, like, when we're you know, not given all of these options to distract ourselves, naturally we can sort of just sink in with the natural flow of things. And that, you know, I hope that's what most of us on planet Earth are doing. We get to see the racist idiots come to light. We get to see the total goofballs in this world, and that we may not have ever, you know, noticed before.
No, man, it's interesting too. It's kind of goes back to the shadow work we were doing before, right? On a grander scale. I mean, you accept it, it's there, but you don't have to sit and stew in it, right? You don't sit and stew in it, because where you put your attention out eventually will grow, right? And I've had that experience right now too, man. Like, there's a lot of fear and stuff like that. And if I'm sitting around watching CNN all day, I'm pretty much sure I'm going to stay in that fear. You know what I mean? Like that is what's going to go down. But there's so much love built up at the same time. It's the balance of the universe, right? When there's all this one thing, there's all this one other thing, right? My experience.
Cool. Sir Oswald, thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming in. What a great conversation. Everybody check out the Conscious Brotherhood. Check it out. And I'm going to start the little preparation in the morning. I don't know. I'm just inspired. I hope it lasts. I hope I don't come up with too many excuses.
You know what they say? Try it for 7 days, right? They say it's 7 days to build a new habit. So at least give yourself that. Be like, I'm going to do this for 7 days. That's it. But
I got time.
There's your tip for today. 7 days, and you'll be you won't be perfect, because that's not the goal. 7 days, new hobby.
Next Thursday, next show, Giuseppe, we're going to talk about what's improved.
Oh, I'm listening now. I'll be back. I'm gonna be paying attention, guys. Yeah.
I'll try and put it in my calendar. We'll see.
Yeah.
Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening, everyone. Congratulations, Darren, on your 14 years of recovery. Round of applause for you. Super proud of you.
Hug life.
There you go. You can catch all the information and how to register for one of the Conscious Brotherhood events on our Facebook page here. Just click on the link below. And thanks for listening, everybody. Really appreciate it. Take care. Thanks for being on the show.
Awesome, guys. Thank you.
Okay, take care. Bye, Darren.
See you guys.